And tonight, Mark's going to talk to us about Boris Spassky, some of his selected attacking games.
Yeah.
So over to you, Mark, to tell us about my favourite Boris.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. No contest. Yeah. Thanks, Steve. What I'll do I'm going to do a brief introduction to Boris Spassky's, not life's the wrong word, but more about his character more than anything. I think that's germane to what happened to him in later life. But most of my source is this book by Bernard Cafferty, Spassky's best 100 best games. I've also picked some stuff up from chess games, some later games as well. So I shall. I've got 11 games to go through. So I'm going to make this not quite as interactive as I've done with previous sessions, but I've got some questions to ask people at some points. What I would say is I have got some less well-known games, but I have got some quite well-known games. So you may have seen some of these games before, but I make no apologies for that because they're great games. And they bear seeing again, in my opinion. But so sorry if you've seen some of them before, but they're not seen often enough, in my opinion. So anyway, so I'll start with a bit of history. So Boris Vasilyevich Spassky was born in Leningrad in 1937. And it's said that he learned chess at the age of 5 on a train which was evacuating him from Leningrad during the start of the Nazi siege. Obviously, Leningrad wasn't as bad as Stalingrad, but it was still pretty bad. And he learned chess on that route. And then obviously there was the end of the war, and after the war there was sort of problems with food and everything. But he got into chess, and he liked playing it. And a bit later on, he said, there was an interview with Leonard Barden, actually, and Leonard Barden interviewed him. As a young boy, I never thought I would become a strong chess player or a professional. Later, when I grew up, I understood that it was necessary for me to take chess more seriously. But I continued to be very lazy about it. This is a contradiction, but it's in my nature to be like a Russian bear. So Barden says, what do you mean a Russian bear? So he says, someone who is very calm and lazy, and who even finds it an effort to spend the time to stand up. Now, some people say these things about themselves, and it's not really true, but I feel this is quite germane to Spassky's personality. He wasn't particularly academic at school. He was very keen on sport, especially volleyball and tennis, but he liked history, but he was best at mathematics. So he started doing a degree in mathematics, but with his chess commitments and other activities, he decided it was too much like hard work. That's his excuse anyway. And he switched to journalism, and didn't have to do too much work on that. And when he said the exams were easy, but he wasn't interested in journalism really. He didn't do any journalism after that. Didn't write any books or anything. So I kind of feeling he's just too bone-hard to do the work to do maths. But there you go. So he was very sort of calm, relaxed, not very driven is what I'm trying to get to here. It's my perception of him anyway. He was said to be a very charming man. He was married 3 times, and he was quite well known, quite keen on the ladies. And there's a very famous story, which I think is not apocryphal, but I'm not sure, that he was in a bar. I think it was when he was living in France. He was in a bar and was chatting up the barmaid, and got out a chess set and played chess with her and deliberately lost. Now, if you can imagine Kasparov or Carlsen or Alekhine deliberately losing, he was more interested in other things, not so much the result of the game, So it's sort of a bit about his personality. Something else I wanted to say really was about people know Spassky because mostly these days because he's lost to Fischer. And it was there's a lot of bad games in that match by Spassky and by a couple by Fischer, but it's worth bearing in mind they played 5 times before that match, and Spassky had won 3, drawn 2, and lost none against Fischer. So it wasn't before the match it was by no means a foregone conclusion that he was going to lose. And one other thing I wanted to say also, which encapsulates his attitude to the game, was that in the very famous 6th game of the Spassky-Fischer match, where it was the Queen's Gambit declined toss cover variation, where the best game of the match that Fischer won. At the end, the crowd were applauding, and Spassky stood up and applauded Fischer as well. I can't think of many world champions who would applaud their opponents when they just duffed them over in a world championship match. So his attitude was very, very much relaxed about it. You know, he wasn't a driven man to be world champion. He was just a good player. You know, so that's my sense of him anyway, from all the things I've seen written. So having said all that, I'm going to start on some of the games, hopefully. Okay, this is also a fairly well-known game. I think Spassky was how old was he? 12, 11 or 12, against a chap called Avtonomov, and just he started out. He was thought to be a very sort of careful, correct player, and he had Vladimir Zak as a trainer, but also he ended up they gave him Tolosh as a trainer, who was very tactically aware, and he sort of made him become more tactical. You know, and that's what you see a lot of in Spassky later on. I think it must have been in him. He just was a bit nervous. So this game is against Avtonomov, and as in a junior tournament, and it's quite an interesting game in a way, because obviously this is all before computers and anything like that. But the Soviets were very, very correct in training their students, I think.
What colour is Spassky?
White. So this is it's all fairly well known. I'm not going to play he's play A4, but he plays Queen E2, B5, Bishop B3, Knight C6, Knight C3, pawn takes pawn, Rook D1, B7, pawn takes pawn. Now at this point, I think that makes well, it's a fairly well motivated move, in the sense he wants to occupy D5, you know, but he's a bit lagging in development here. So Spassky, what's Spassky's next move, do you think?
Bishop takes E6.
No, not that spectacular. Much more.
I think we may have had this game demonstrated before by Andy Martin. I think it does White play D5 here?
He does, yeah. I've not seen that, so yeah, okay. He does play D5, which is interesting because it's protected 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Protected 3 times. But it's the development thing, you know. Bishop G5, and now the pressure's right on. So Bishop E7, so he knocks it off. Pawn takes, Knight takes. He plays Bishop takes D5. Let me just check that. Yeah, E takes D5 is slightly better, but it's horrendous anyway. And Knight D4. So just on positional grounds, you know, it's well worth a pawn, right? This is just horrendous for Black. But it's a nice clean finish. I mean, knowing Black cooperates, but